Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Empowered to Live, where faith meets purpose and purpose fuels freedom. I am your host, Andrew Rose Butler, and we are back with part three of our series, Breaking Up with Limitations. We have discussed procrastination and how, that limits us when we don't do what we're supposed to do at the time we're supposed to do it, and then letting go of those things that no longer serve us. And so today, we are going to be talking about creativity. And sometimes, we let those things fall by the wayside because of, our busyness or, our schedule, or sometimes we just feel like we are in survival mode. And I know for a lot of my life that that's where I lived. I lived in survival, and it was more important for me to uh, meet the needs of my family. As a single parent, trying to work a full time job, trying to do all the different things, and creativity just wasn't on the radar for me for a long time until I was challenged with writing curriculum for a course that our church was offering, and I got a call saying, "Hey, we need you to write this," and I had never really written anything. I've done some short stories when I was in high school and wrote poetry when I was in high school, but never really like wrote anything like major that wasn't like personally for myself or for a grade in school. We had an assignment and you would do it, book reports, all those different things that you did when you're in school, but nothing of that nature. And I was like, I don't even know where to begin. And I'm dating myself. This was before the days of internet and definitely way before AI. And I'm sitting down with this book and I'm like, where do I start? How do I even begin to start writing? And, I sat there with my notebook and pen and the book that I was supposed to be using to write this curriculum. And I'm doing curriculum with a midterm and a final, and having facilitators book, and then having the student book, and so creating all of these things. And I had like 2 weeks and to get it all done. And I was like, God, I don't even know where to begin. I have never done this before. And in that moment, it was like I got pushed. Because I got pushed into this, it has opened up a world for me in that moment, because she pushed me beyond my limitations. And I think about that scripture that says that that God would do exceedingly and abundantly above all that you could ask, think, or imagine. And so this is where I was. He went above and beyond for me to write this curriculum and then turn around and teach it. Because since I wrote it, she was like, okay, you can also teach it as well. And I was like, wow. And if you knew me back then, you don't know how big of an ass that was. Public speaking was definitely not in my wheelhouse. I lived in the shadows, and this is where I like to stay. Was back in the back. Put me in the kitchen. You need me to cook. You need me to clean. What? I am your girl. I was there, and so being able to be further pushed into this space opened up so many doors for me that at that moment, I couldn't even begin to imagine what was happening. And the scripture just came to mind to me about, eyes haven't seen and ears haven't heard. And I know he's talking about eternity, about the things that God has prepared for those who love him, but in that moment, I couldn't even begin to imagine and understand or even think about her saying, "This is what I know." She said, "God told me to tell you to do it." And me going, "Okay, God, help me do this." Because, and that, like I said, that door that opened up for me, where, someone letting go last week, letting go of the fear that had held me hostage for most of my life, and for it to put me into that place. And here I am now, looking back. I have written courses for different churches and Bible studies, Most of my writing now are like Bible studies and devotionals and different things like that. And here I am now working on what, book 12, I think it is. And that creativity that opened up, and even my own first personal Bible study book came out of, I had already done it, and I was teaching a home Bible study, and I was trying to scramble every week, trying to figure out what I was going to do, what I'm going to teach, what am I, how I'm going to get this together. And a book came to me, and that book was, Becoming a Woman God Can Use: Lessons from God's Female Board of Directors. Was the first like Bible study that I did for my own personal self that kind of came out of, God, what am I helping these women to learn? And it's also the impetus and the name for my ministry, to Becoming Women's Network. All of that came out of me letting go of fear, recognizing, that I had it in me to do, and then being able to do it. And that was, we're talking about breaking up with limitations. So I had limitations on myself that I wasn't even aware that I had limitations on me. I wasn't aware of the gifts that I had. I wasn't aware of the creativity that was on the inside of me. And so in that moment, thank you, Elder Todd, for pushing me to write that curriculum that all those years ago, which, like I said, had been the stepping stone, the bridge to where I am today, as an author, now as a public speaker, now as a podcast host, as a minister, and so all of these things, all of these doors that her saying, God said that you could do it, and this is what you need to do, has brought me to the space and place that I am right now in my creativity. And like I said, at that moment, I was still in survival mode. I was still, coming out of an abusive marriage, trying, we had just finished basically being homeless. And so we had just come out of that space, but still struggling as well, with working financially, all those different things. And so I was definitely in the mode of survival. But that gift, that she stirred up the gift, as Paul told Timothy to do, stir it up. And it was stirred up in me to be able to become creative, to be able to write, and to look at things in so many different ways, that have inspired so many different people to want to step into their gifts. And I tell you that, who I am as an individual and who I am as this ministry is to do that. It's about empowering and inspiring you to step into the purpose for which God has created you to do. God, all of us has a gift. We all have gifts, and so when we don't walk in the gifts that we have, we are limiting ourselves, and we're limiting, the impact that we can have on the world, because of the fact that we may live in fear, like I did, or in an unawareness, or being procrastination, which is also another limitation that we have on our life. And so we look at our scripture for today, Exodus 35:35 says that he has filled them with skills to do all kinds of work, as engravers, designers, embroiderers, and blue, purple, scarlet yarn, and fine linen, and weavers, all of them skilled workers and designers. So we are all skilled. And coming up next week, I believe, it's International Artist Day. And so look at, we're going to celebrate the artistic gift that you have. And so your gift may not be in writing like mine, or in singing like, like someone else, but maybe you can cook, and that is an artistic skill. Not everyone can cook, and even some who can cook don't cook well. So if you have that gift, or our baking, I call myself experimenting, and sometimes my experiments are good and sometimes they're not, but they're edible but not pleasant, to look at. And so some people have that gift of, maybe you're a decorator, or you're a seamstress, or an artist who paints and takes pictures, and all these different things. There's so many different ways that we are creative. We can create. We are creative in the way we interact with people, and kindness. And people skills, that is a gift. That is a creative gift, because not everyone is able to connect with people or make people feel comfortable. So, and not say, well, I can't sing, or I can't write, or I can't do this. But you are gifted in some way. We have all been created by the Creator to be creative. And so, whatever that looks like for you, it is what it is, and that's what we're going to look at. And sometimes, again, we bury our creativity under the weight of responsibilities, sometimes fear of failure. Like I said, for me, being asked to do something that I had never done, I'm like, what if it fails? I have to teach this class in a few weeks. And what am, what am I going to do, and how am I going to do that? And to sit down, after I hung that phone up, and when I got the book and pulled it all together and just sat down, and words just begin to start flowing, and out of that, comes this whole 13-week teaching that had to be done, and it was done within a week. And things have gotten better. I write better. I write a little bit more. And so, we have, all of us, again, have those gifts. And so we just got to put aside, whether it's procrastination, maybe sometimes we're letting go of the things that no longer serve us. We talked about last week, maybe the words that someone said to you has held you back. I know for me, that was a big issue, especially with singing, that words have power, and they have impact, and sometimes we got to be careful of what we say to each other, but also the words that we say to ourselves as well, that we can sometimes our limit ourselves because of the words that we speak and decree over ourselves. So creativity is not wasted time. It's a form of worship. Creativity can be healing. I know people who journal. That's not my gift. I'm not a journaler. But I write poetry when stuff comes to mind, and I write poetry, and that's how I deal when I need to. But I don't journal. And there are people who journal. They write books, and they're so creative with their journaling. That's not me. And so again, like it says, when you write, paint, design, cook, build, or even dream, you reflect the Creator. So even our dreams, because we can dream and inspire others with that. So what are some ways that we can reawaken? Let's get those words out. Our creativity. So revisit dormant dreams. So what are some of those things that you have put aside? Maybe somebody told you that dream or that gift you have was childish. I've seen so many things where people wanted to be an artist, or some kind of designer, and people are like, no, you need to go to medical school, you need to be a lawyer, you need to be an accountant, and you're drowning and in that, and so you've just buried it away. You put stuff away. I've seen people who are just been so creative, even with like Lego art, that they can create all these things with like Legos, and that's a whole nother genre of creativity. And maybe again, someone may have said, oh, that's childish. Being an artist is childish. Baking is a waste of time. You know, Building, designing, any of those things, you may have been told it was foolish. And so you bought into that lie, and you hid it. You hid your gift. You buried your talent because of that. And so it's time for you to go dig it up and put it to use. So let's revisit a project where you left behind or unfinished, and ask God to reignite that passion again. Ask Him to stir up the gift inside of you again, to reignite that creativity that you have, the vision to see. I'm learning, I like nature. Nature doesn't always like me, but I like nature. I like taking nature photos, is what I like to do. So it's another thing that I've kind of gotten into, and I've always done that, and I've always seen it. And I was like, oh, that makes such a great picture. And I have been taking pictures And so that's been something that has been awakened in me of, taking photos now, and be doing it for a while. And I finally found an outlet for me to be able to, to submit those, and do stuff. And, your phone is now, they have pro on your phone, on your telephone, which is like really awesome now. So you don't have to worry about getting a camera and all of the equipment and all those different things, and you can edit and do all those different things. If you want to expand that on your phone, you can do that, using, Google Photos or whatever. There's other tools and apps probably out there for you to be able to do that. And so ask God to reignite a passion, or maybe start one. Maybe you looked and you're like, oh, I would love to do that. Do it. Do it. Creativity, like I said, it's healing. It's an act of worship, but it's also self-care. And I'm a proponent of self-care. You see, I just got my hair done. It's about taking care of yourself, and how do we fuel that? How do we fuel that creativity that we have on the inside of us, that again breathes life into us? And no matter how foolish it may appear to someone else, if it's feeding your soul and spirit and bringing you joy, in a world right now that is heavy, we definitely need a creative outlet, for ourselves to be able to express sometimes the things that are inside of us, that needs to come out. We need a form of a healthy form of expression, and our creativity. Is that when you want to cook? Maybe you're like, I'm cooking, but what do I do with it? There are homeless shelters, there are nursing homes, there are, you can start a community garden, so many different things that we can do, to use our creativity to make an impact on the world. So schedule creative time. We make appointments for everything else, and we have our creativity, and sometimes we're dead scrolling on social media, and we look up and we spend 2 hours on Facebook or Instagram, or like my mom is famous to do, and she's on YouTube, and she has these YouTube shorts, and she's just down there and she's on her YouTube and she's watching YouTube shorts, or Facebook's whatever she's on, and she's just scrolling. And it's just like, and my kids were like, "Oh, she's so cute. She's a teenager," because yeah, social media is her thing. But she does her word fine, and she does her other things. That's how she expresses her creativity. She can't garden like she used to. We'll have the space for it. We're talking about getting some more pots for her to be able to plant and then do different things. But, what are some other ways that you can do it? So schedule time. Put on the calendar. Schedule time once a week, whatever. 20 minutes a day, something to, again, to feed into your creativity and get those juices going. Um, Create without judgment. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I think sometimes we think that what we do, has to be perfect. I wish I had brought my picture that I had done. They have a paint and sip thing here, in Merida, that I've gone to once. My kids have gone a couple of times, and the lady that this here, she has a whole wall of them, where she has gone to so many of them, and so she uses them to decorate her shop. And it doesn't have to be perfect. She has the outline, but you are free to do whatever, you want to do. Maybe just, if maybe you want to paint, and that's a great way to try your hand. Find a local meetup where they have maybe a paint and sip or something like that. He's like, I don't drink alcohol. Well, at this place, she serves soda and she does water and she also does food. Who doesn't like food while you paint? And so, it's an easy way for you to spur on that creativity, maybe reignite a gift, or maybe start a gift of painting by having somebody already outline it for you. And all you have to do is choose your colors, and just fill in the blank, get your coloring book, any of those things, to create without judgment. So the goal is not about a masterpiece. It's about expression. Like I told you, I like to bake, and there's some things that I do well, and then there are other things that I don't do so well when it comes to baking, and that's okay. I'm okay with that, as long as it's edible, And my family still enjoys it. They was like, looks a little lumpy there. You maybe should do like this. I'm like, we can cover it with frosting. But it's something that it relaxes me, and it's a way for me to get movement in or whatever. And so look about how can you um, create and be creative, because creativity, it thrives in freedom and not in pressure. So don't put pressure on yourself. So it's not about, oh, I need to take the perfect photo, I need to paint the perfect picture, I need to cook the best meal, gourmet meal, whatever. We don't want to put pressure on yourself. You just want a way to express yourself, to bring that freedom, to bring that release. And again, like I said, when we create, creation is healing. It's healing for the soul. It's healing from the spirit. And it sets you free, and it clears your mind up. Maybe you like to sing. I sing all the time. Because I'm like, oh my God, here she go. And I'm like, what are you singing now? I don't know. I made it up. I don't know. It's just words that came to my mind. And this is what I do. And so maybe that's you. You just make up songs and just like to sing, and this is an expression. Maybe you dance. They said people can dance. I have two left feet. I mean, I can dance some, but I can't dance, and that's okay because that necessarily is my gift. Mine is more in the other creative spheres. But the people who dance, dance around your house, and dance in your room, and just be free. Put some music on and just spend 20 minutes just worshiping through day. So it's also great exercise. So you're killing two birds with one stone, and being able to do again the thing that bring you joy and that brings healing to your soul in this troubled time. And so challenge time. So what creative gift have you buried that God has given you and is inviting you to pick up again? So what is that creative gift that you have? You know, you can share it in the comments on this video. Send me a message and let me know, what creative gift have you buried that God may be inviting you to pick up again? And so the challenge is pick it up. Start today, whatever it is. It's still early in the day, and you always say that it's early in the day. For me here, it's almost 6. For people on the East Coast, it's almost 8, but it's still early. You can still dance around your room. You can start writing a book. You can start journaling. You can pull out a recipe that you're going to start do tomorrow or on the weekend. Whatever it is, you can research different places and things to find that activity that you love, that will fuel your soul and fuel your spirit, and get you back into that space of creativity and freedom. And again, it's not about pressure, it's not about perfection, it's just about getting it done. Start small. And for those of you who have been watching me for a while, you know that journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step. So the first step is to begin. Break it out and start doing. And that's what I'm challenging you to do, that break out, get that creativity going, get those creative juices going again. And like I said, shoot me a message, let me know, comment on this video about, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is the gift that I have buried, and now I'm resurrecting that gift because, it made me happy. But, somebody said, who told you you could sing? Who told you you could write? Who told you that you were a good dancer? Your food didn't look good. That was childish. You're too old for that. You're too young for that. So whatever it was that somebody said, or what you said to yourself, it's time to let it go and begin to pick it up again. So you were created to create. So don't underestimate the power of small steps towards rekindling your gift. And so if you need help getting started with that, I wrote a mini guide called Renewing Your Dreams, Living Purposefully at Any Age. It's a link is in my bio if you want to check that out. Download, it's totally free if you want to check that out. And, yes, got the smart steps on how to get going and how to get moving, and some things that you can do in towards working towards your gift, or if you want more detailed information and more steps and more guidance, do two things. You can also get my book, Becoming a Woman God Can Use. And it says Become a Woman God Can Use, but guys, it's for you too. Because the Word of God is without gender, and making those steps to become who you were created to be is without gender. It was just specific because of that woman's Bible study and because of the ministry that I have, Becoming Women's Network. Why it was called Becoming a Woman God Can Use. But it's also for you as well. Or you can also, book a consultation call with me if for life coaching services. If that's something you want and you need somebody to hold you accountable to get it done. And that's something you can do as well by visiting my website, and you can go ahead and book that free consultation call. But that's it for me for tonight. You can join me next week as we continue our series with mental health checkup, letting go of old patterns. So let's talk about, what are some of those old patterns that we have that we need to kind of let go of, but also delve into what they are and how they are holding us back, and so what the limitations they are on us. So we're going to do a mental health checkup. So I thank you all again for joining me for this episode of Empowered to Live. And remember that this is where your freedom is fueled. We are empowered to live this life and to live godly, and we have everything that we need to do so. So thank you. You all have a wonderful night and a great weekend. See you next week. Bye.